Hey guys, how's it going? So this is a super important tutorial. This is a must on every single web application that you build with WWX and Sano. And I just want to share that with you. How to have a staging environment and a live environment with WWX and Sano. So in Webflow it's pretty straightforward, right? We already have seen this. We have the staging domain where we can publish updates that we have already done, the designer. And as well, once those updates have been tested and we have seen that it looks good on mobile, desktop, whatever, we will publish the production, right? So that's the flow. And the same with Wiz, right? We will have the updates done automatically to the staging domain. And if we have a pay plan, we can click here in the custom domain and we can publish, and those updates will go live. Because the same, we don't want to make updates, or we don't want to make updates to the live site directly, right? So now, how does it work with Sano? So in Sano, let me just show you. We will do it right now. So we have first of all, a live database, and we can create as well a test database. So I will do that right now. So pretty much it will just clone all of our tables, without data, only the fields that we have inside each. So if I'm on the test database, as you can see, I have all the tables, but with no data. It doesn't have any data. And I can go from live to, let me just say it, call this live. And if I go here to the test environment, there's nothing. So that's pretty much it. And not only we have, different type of data, but as well, we have different type of, APIs. So we have branches. This is pretty much like GitHub branches work. And let me just show you that. By default, we have only one branch, but we can create a new one. And the source from the branch can be the V1, right? So we can reuse all of that data. Let's just add a purple color here too. And we can create a new branch. So this is the thing, how can we make this dynamic, So this is the thing, in Wiz it's the most of the work. I will show you that. So first of all, here we have, let me just delete this because I had to set it up here. Let me just clear everything here so you guys don't see anything. So by default, right, we have our base URL, right? And I will go first, tackle the test database. How can we affect the test database or the live database? Then I will look into branches. So let's take a look to that. So if I go here and I go to manage data sources, as you can see, we have some documentation. I will look into the documentation, and as you can see, we how to use the test database source with your API request, right? We have this section right here. So there's two ways. You can set a header or you can set a URL parameter. So it depends, what do we need to use. By default, let's always have a header. Let me just show you how to set it up. So on every single API call that you make from Wiz to Sano, let's just call this create log. Let's add it to a test folder here. Wiz tutorial here, we will return. There's an endpoint that I have created here in Sano just to show you all of it. Let me just go, first of all, let me just go to my main branching because we won't look into branches yet. We'll only look into how to publish to the test database or the live database. So first of all, let's go to here to our API. I have a dummy endpoint that I created. By the way, let me just hide this as well because this will come handy in a minute. And as well, we don't need data source yet either. And yeah, that's pretty much, well, we don't need none of that. So let me just create those fields. Let me just call this test for now. Now let's not even call it anything like that. Let's just save it, just publish. So let's first test, by the way, I will show what's the logic behind here in a minute. I will show you that in a minute. So let's just do it. So we have the last part of the endpoint here, return, fantastic. And then the method is post. Then we need to add the header, right? So we'll look into the documentation here, data source, test. By the way, let's first, And we want to set it to be test, right? If I run this right now, let me just first look into my tables. I want you guys to see the tables so you guys can see the updates. So first of all, let's go to our test database. Let's go to logs. As you can see, there's nothing. So let's run this. Missing bar entry. Oh, that's the last part of the API request, I think, because yeah, let's just delete this right here. We don't want none of that. Just publish again. But even it must have run. The only thing that it didn't give us a successful response, but it ran. So if I look into the logs here, we have it right here. We just created it. Fantastic. So obviously we don't want to, because whenever we just publish this, we don't want to be making, changes here statically, like instead of being test, let's just call it live, right? We don't want to make those static changes. We want to make it dynamic. So we always want to work with the test database while we are on this webflow.io domain. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a logic here. If href that includes parentheses, open and close, includes webflow.io, then, and this equals true, then we want to say, hey, let's return test, right? We want to work with the test environment. Let me just do, here, return test. Else we want to return live. By the way, don't use production. I don't know why whenever you set X data source to be production, it doesn't work. It just gives us an error. So let's just call it live. So in that way, if I return this right now, as you can see, we have the test environment. So that's pretty cool. So now that's pretty much it. So next step, right? So this is pretty cool right now. If we make a request or if we run this request from a domain, that doesn't have the webflow.io, so it means this is that live domain, it won't send the test data. So it will make it will create a field on the live side. So as I don't have a live project and I don't want to pay for one and I don't have a domain right now, let's just test it for now. Let's just call this live as well. So even if it's webflow.io, it will return live. So let's see what happens, right? Let's run it. If I go to my data source, what time is it? 1:42. If I refresh this, there's nothing here, because if I look into live data, it just created 1:40 p.m., 1:42 p.m. Fantastic. Fantastic. And that's pretty much it. Right now, this is already dynamic. Let's just set it back to be test here, if it's a webflow.io domain. Let's continue here. So when do we want to, instead of using headers, because this is a must for every single API request, you need to set the headers. Now, there is some cases where instead of sending a header, you want to send a URL parameter. When? Let me just show you. So in Sano, we want to create two variables, two environment variables, super important. One is going to be called staging-based URL, and the other one is going to be called production-based URL. You want to set here your webflow.io domain, and here you want to set your live domain. Why? You will see that in a minute. This is really useful for cases like Stripe redirects, successful Stripe URL redirects, as well Google authentication and redirect URLs. You want to, if you are authenticated with Google, you want to stay on the webflow.io domain if you are testing it from the staging domain, You don't want to, because this has happened to me before. You don't want to be testing on the staging domain, then you're authenticating with Google, and then you're suddenly sent to the live site. And as it's just weird. It doesn't make sense. We should never do that. This has to be, dynamic. This has to be, clean. So as well, not only here, but as well in cases like wherever you want to have these URLs, because the only things that you want to, set statically are the paths. You want to have this data dynamic because I know that you will use the URLs, the base URL, in different places in your, where you're developing your web application. So once we have that, let's go back here. Let's go to Wiz tutorial here. Let's go to create log. And here, this is pretty cool, where we will add that, the URL parameter that the Sano documentation is asking us for. X data source. Let's copy that. Let's go here. Let's add some text here. And now I created a function here that this is using just the exactly the input here, x data source. And what this function does is really simple. Here, so you can see it's waiting for the input. It has conditional. If equals test, then we are going to set the staging base URL and then the base URL, the production base URL. As I said, when do we want this, this function? When do we want to use this function is whenever we are going to use the base URL to create some logic, right? So let's say, hey, let's add the site URL here. Not only that, but let's return the site URL. And we want to then redirect the user to the production site or to the live site, right? Let's say, we're signing up the user and we are, redirecting the user with the URL that we're sending from here. Normally, I know we will use a path on Wiz, but let's just test it with that in that way for now. So let's do it. Now, instead of sending the header, this is all lowercase, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's different. Let's make sure that this is literally the same. We don't want any uppercase letters there. Let's paste that right here. Fantastic. Let's return it. You can see it's test. Fantastic. And now, what else we want to? First of all, let's run it. Let's run it here. You guys can see that it's working. Create log. Let's run it. As you can see, we got the webflow tutorial.io URL. And now, just for testing, let's just set it to be live here. Let's run it again. As you can see, we got the Produlis domain. Fantastic. So pretty cool. And now we can just obviously create a redirect action. I won't test it right now, but that's how you guys set it. Now, next step, so branches, right? How does that work? How can we set it up? Let me just show you once again. So as you can see here, if I go to my current branch, I already created one, but let me just delete it. I don't want to show you that yet, right? So let's go here into our basic branch. Let's add a new one. By the way, I already showed you how to create it, but let me just show you now how to set it up, right? Let's call it B2 by default. Sano gives us, default names for them. And now we are on the new branch. So what does this has done literally? So pretty much, if you look into your base URL, whenever you're on the branch number 2, you will see that it has added 2 dots, the letter and the name of your, of your branch. So if I go to my live branch, the one that is live, and if I go to my API endpoints here with tutorial, as you can see, I don't have that anymore because this is the first one. Okay, let's create a new one even. Let's create a new branch from source number 2. Let's create it here. So why do we want branches, right? The reason why you want branches is you want to test or to update your API endpoints without even affecting, the live side, the live user. So that's fantastic. Not only you want that, but as well you want to be working with the test data, while you're working with these test branching APIs. And that's what we're looking for here. This is what we're going to achieve. So how can we try to do it dynamic? And I will show you in a minute. First of all, let's just delete the branching number 3 here. And this is the way that we can do it dynamically. So now here we have our Wiz tutorial base URL. So because this is what is changing, right? We're just adding, here, if it's the branch number 2, we will just add 2 dots v2 and the name of the branch, right? So how can we do it dynamic? So the way that we can do it is the same way that we just set it up, the playing with the test data or live data. So it will be called, I guess, branch version, right? We can call that, and we can say if, once again, right? If href that includes, once again, webflow.io equals true, then we can say return nothing. It's empty. We can say as well else return v2. Oh, sorry, 2 dots v2. Yep. And if I run it right here, as you can see, oh, this is the other way around. My mistake. v2 2 dots. If it contains, yeah, we want to have the testing environment. Otherwise, yep, this should give me v2. Okay, fantastic. So now what we can do is go here to our WIS tutorial, and then we can say plus our branch version. So we need to refresh the page. And now if I run this, as you can see, we have the V2. How can we make this dynamic, right? Because obviously, if I create a new branch here in Sano, if I create a new branch, like number 3 or something like that, that is not dynamic anymore. I'm only using, no name or the 2 dots V2, right? So the way that I will set it up is, so as you can see, right? Yeah, I only have 2 versions of it. So now let's just do some changes on the version number 2. I already have a live site, right? I don't want to make any changes directly to the, to the API endpoint. So I'm making changes here to my testing environment, my branching testing environment. Let's just do some changes here. Let's just do, for example, create log here instead of, adding a record. Yeah, well, let's add a record, but let's return as well that right here. Let's say test 1, right? Call it as, I don't know, new log, something like that. Fantastic. Let's call this URL. Just publish that. By the way, something really useful, this is a trick that I will suggest is make sure that you always try to return something not as default, but with a name. Because if in the future you want to add some extra data to the response, you don't need to make any changes to WIS. Yeah, because, whatever. That's something that it will happen to you probably in the future, with some projects. You always want to add a name for a return so you have exact reference. Instead of referring to the whole object that you get from the response, you can just refer to the name. And if you add some extra data, it won't affect your logic already built in WIS. But yeah, so I have done some changes and I will publish that. Good. And now the way, this is the trick, right? Instead of, instead of going here and setting these branches live, let's just merge the branches, Select the branch that will be used as the source of your merge. So what is going to be the source of my merge? This is going to be the source, the V2. This is going to be overriding everything that is in V1. So let's select V2 and then select the destination branch that will receive the merge. So which one I want to override is V1. Okay, so let's select that. As you can see, we only have 2 changes here. And I can even look into the changes. This is a new update. This is fantastic. So as you can see, I added this and I edited this. It's fantastic what Sano has done, like literally. And now I can close this and I can publish. And now I don't need to do anything in WIS. This is already live. My updates have been pushed to the regular, API endpoint. This is all dynamic. So the only where I need to make changes is in Sano. If I make the changes in Sano and I then merge the branches and it works, it's already set up. I don't need to do any I don't need to do any changes in WIS, right? It's already set up. So that's fantastic. That's, I have done this manually for other projects in the past. And this is how I should have done it, a while ago. So now if I go here to my test database, branch version, as you can see, oh, by the way, this was set up like this. By the way, I stopped the video for a second here, so I made an error. But now, if I run this, right, I get B2. But for now, let's just remove that. So nothing. Let me refresh the page. So now, as I already merged the branches, right? If I run this request right here, create log, and I run it, you can see I get the URL and I get the new log. So fantastic. Those changes were, done dynamically from Sano to WIS. And this is how everyone should set it up. This is a must on every single web application. So I hope you like this video. I hope it's really useful. I hope we're always, trying to improve our processes, because this is why we build on top of these applications, right? We need to have solid processes in order to build for enterprise companies. And just to deliver, a better quality, to improve our process, to make it way faster, and as well to improve the quality of our projects. So, they are easier to scale. I hope you guys like this tutorial.